My name is Chin Sha. Today is the first day since I was thrown back 10,000 years by the warp. The place where I woke up was not Terra, nor was it Saturn, nor the battlefield the Grey Knights were sending me to, but a planet called Nuceria. And what is worse, right here, I saw a young Angren, the one destined to become the most tyrannical and most tragic Primarch. Right now, he does not yet have the butcher's nails, has not been consumed by rage, and has not yet become a war-crazed lunatic. He is just a child in the gladiator arena, someone who feels fear, who feels pain, and who bears the suffering of others. Fate has not yet sealed our paths, then I must find him. Before this world destroys him, I must drag him out of this hell. But before I could save him, I almost died myself. It all started with a warship, a lunar-class cruiser, 5 kilometers long, in the real universe. It was enough to disrupt planetary gravity. But in the warp, it was like a leaf in a torrential rain, small, helpless, and ready to be torn to shreds at any moment. The warp is no ordinary space route. There is no stable time there. No normal direction, only twisted emotions, shattered souls, and monsters lurking in the dark. As the warship crossed that hellish place, outside was a giant eye of swirling stars. Nebulas shaped like demonic claws, a sight where even a single glance would shatter a mortal's sanity. And inside the ship, things were far worse. The resurrected dead wandered the corridors, and once loyal crew members began tearing into their comrades. Demons crawled from the shadows, slaughtering every living thing in their path. Gunfire, screams, explosions, and the howling of monsters, all blending together, like a symphony of utter despair. On the command bridge, everyone was panicking. The captain was still there. The officers were still there, the soldiers were still there. But they were no longer discussing how to retake the ship. Instead, they argued over who would die first, who would guard the last door, and who would make sure the captain's corpse wouldn't fall into the hands of demons. That is the most terrifying thing about the warp. It does not just kill. It destroys your will first, letting fear spread like a plague. Until a heavy thud of footsteps echoed onto the command bridge. Suddenly, everyone fell silent. 2 silver-armored warriors walked through the door, one holding a massive shield and a longsword, the other wielding a power halberd. They were far taller than mortals, and far more silent. Many did not know who they were, but the moment they saw that silver armor, they instinctively believed. The Emperor's angels had arrived. They were the Grey Knights, warriors dedicated to hunting demons. They are also mankind's sharpest blade when facing the warp. Yet, these 2 Grey Knights were not here to take over command. They completely ignored the captain, ignored the officers, and walked straight toward the corner. A stasis pod stood there, and the person floating inside it was me. The me back then had just finished the transformation surgery. My physical body was still asleep, but my mind was trapped deep within my memories. The halberd-wielding Grey Knight stood beside the pod, using his psychic powers to probe my mind. What he saw was my past life. I didn't originally belong to the Grey Knights. I was first taken in by the White Scars chapter. Back then, I appeared on a desolate world. My body was young, but my soul did not match that age. After the White Scars found me, they discovered I had a psychic gift. More importantly, my emotions were incredibly stable. For a psyker, this was almost a miracle. The White Scars librarian taught me that psychic power can warp reality, unleash lightning, ignite fires, and strengthen the body. It can foresee the future, and even make wounds regrow flesh, but its source comes from the warp. This means every use of psychic power is like lighting a lamp in a dark ocean. The light illuminates the way forward, but it also attracts monsters. I should have stayed with the White Scars, taken the name Chin Sha, become a chapter librarian, and fought for them until my death. But fate had other plans. The Grey Knights found me. They wanted my psychic powers, and they wanted my stability. The White Scars refused to let me go, and my mentor refused even more. But the Grey Knights had their reasons. Mankind's great enemy was closing in. They didn't have time to let me grow slowly. So, I was taken away to undergo transformation and become a new Astartes, a space marine. Before I could even wake up, disaster struck the ship. The halberd-wielding Grey Knight noticed I was semi-conscious, yet my psychic powers hadn't spiraled out of control. This should have been good news. As long as we held the bridge, and held on until the ship left the warp, everything might still be saved. But a second later, A giant axe hacked through the blast door, and a crimson greater demon squeezed through the opening. It spread its blood-dripping wings, its roar shattering everyone's resolve. The shield-bearing Grey Knight charged first, his great shield blocking the dual axes. His sword sliced through flesh as blue psychic lightning erupted across the deck. The mortal soldiers also fought back. Some clutched melta bombs and threw themselves into the horde of demons, while others, knowing they would die, still blocked the doorway. Everyone was screaming, for the God Emperor. In that moment, I heard them. I woke up inside the incubation pod, my body locked tight by restraints. I couldn't move, so I could only use my psychic power to join the fight. Tried to unleash lightning, tried to mend the flesh and blood of the wounded. But the dampeners inside the pod were crushing my mind. My psychic powers felt bound by heavy chains. I could still use them, but barely at all. The Grey Knight with the halberd saw me strike, and his face instantly twisted. He roared at me, as if trying to stop me, but the battlefield was in utter chaos. I couldn't hear a word he said. All I saw were waves of demons, flooding through the shattered doors. All I saw was the mortal's defensive line, being swallowed up bit by bit. All I saw was that battle cry, for the God Emperor, fading from a roaring shout into a weak whimper, and then into pure despair. Until finally, that great demon charged right up to my pod. Its massive axe shattered the glass, and it reached in, choking my throat, like holding a worthless trophy. In the next second, my consciousness went completely dark. I thought I was dead, but I wasn't. I heard a voice again, echoing over and over in my ears. Wake up. The noise split my head open, and I snapped my eyes open. My psychic mind erupted like a shockwave, completely shattering the ruined pod. I tumbled out of the chamber, slamming hard onto the burning hot sand. My head shattered a rock, yet I didn't feel a thing. I just pushed myself up and rubbed my smooth, bald scalp. Then I looked down at myself, standing at nearly 2.7 meters tall, with ridiculously massive muscles and the biological organs of a superhuman warrior. I finally knew for sure, I had actually become an Astartes. This was a moment I had fantasized about 1,000 times. But right now, there was no excitement, no pride, only confusion. Why wasn't I dead? Where did the Grey Knights go? Where was the warship? And where on earth was this vast desert in front of me? I forced myself to calm down. My White Scar's mentor once taught me, when you still have the chance to clear your mind, you must do so. Because what a psyker fears most has never been the enemy, but losing control of oneself. I sat cross-legged on the hot sand, and began to process the situation. First, I wasn't dead. Second, my incubation pod is here. But there's no sign of warship wreckage anywhere, meaning I didn't crash. It's more like I was spit out of the warp all on my own. Third, this isn't the warp, but the real universe. That leaves only two questions. Where am I, and what time is it? This is absolutely crucial, because warp travel. The most irrational thing is, some who emerge from it, find that hundreds of years have passed in the outside world. Others reach their destination, only to return to a time before they even set out. Time in the real universe holds no meaning in the warp. So, it is highly likely that I am no longer in my original era. But I still hold on to hope. Maybe there is an imperial world nearby, maybe this planet has a governor. As long as I find the local authority and reveal my identity as an Astartes, they can send me away. With that thought, I stood up and began to cross the desert. The blazing sun hung high, and the sand was scorching hot. If an ordinary human fell here, they wouldn't last long. But for an Astartes, this is merely an inconvenience, not a dead end. I can run without stopping, at 30 kilometers an hour, and even faster if necessary. But after traveling some distance, I suddenly stopped, because I felt a gaze on me. Not a gaze from the present, but a gaze from 3 minutes in the future. My vision suddenly shot outward, like looking down on the desert from high above. A few kilometers away, a convoy was approaching. In 3 minutes, they would discover my location. A man who looked like the leader would step down with a tranquilizer gun, locking onto me with scanning gear. This is my psychic premonition. It does not look far ahead, yet it is exceptionally clear, brief, and precise, like a crack torn in the future. Allowing me to steal a glimpse, I snapped back to reality from the vision. My first reaction was not relief, but a frown, only because there were no imperial markings on those vehicles. No double-headed aquila, no emblem that I recognized. This was wrong, but the convoy was already close. I immediately hid behind a sand dune, lying flat on the scorching sand to wait. Before long, the convoy appeared, just like in the vision, but they were more cautious than I expected. Before getting close, the entire convoy ground to a halt. Nearly 100 men got out, all of them armed. A small sphere rose into the air, like a drone, hovering right above me. They had already found me, using thermal imaging, bioscanners, or some other device. In any case, they were not primitive savages. These people had technology, and they had tactics. The leader made a few hand gestures, and 10 men rushed to the front. They tapped their arms, shields instantly deploying. The rest of them raised their weapons, and slowly closed in. I watched them, no longer hiding, and stood straight up. The drone circled around me, energy beginning to build at its base, looking ready to open fire at any second, 100 meters away. Their leader poked his head out and shouted a stream of words at me. I didn't understand. It wasn't High Gothic. That wasn't surprising. The Imperium of Man is vast, and many worlds have their own local languages. But there is one thing. They should recognize, the Imperial Aquila. So I looked down and used my foot to quickly draw the Aquila symbol in the sand. If they belonged to the Imperium, even if they'd never seen an Astartes, they should at least recognize this symbol. They should have realized that the giant standing before them might be an angel of the God Emperor. But I was disappointed. They just stared at the symbol on the ground, their faces filled with confusion and contempt. They didn't recognize it at all. In the next second, the leader barked an order. Everyone fanned out, raising their weapons. Only then did I realize they hadn't come to talk. They were here to hunt, and now they wanted to hunt me. Their drones opened fire first. Before the energy could even discharge, I had already dodged. An ordinary human wouldn't have even registered my movement, but the leader's visor seemed to calculate my trajectory in advance. His body reacted before his brain could, instantly pulling the trigger of his tranquilizer gun. A single tiny dart came flying right at me. I raised my hand and caught it between 2 fingers. The dart shattered, releasing a puff of gas. I almost burst out laughing. Was this a joke? I am an Astartes. Even the toxic miasmas of a death world can't harm me. What did they expect a tiny puff of sedative gas to do? I casually flicked the shattered pieces back, instantly blowing the drone above me to bits. Yet they didn't panic. Instead, they quickly closed their circle around me. Some pulled out grenade-like devices, while others began charging their batons. Others hummed with crackling balls of electricity at the tips of their weapons. They were well trained, and their morale was high. The shield bearers clattered their shields, while the others circled me, letting out a synchronized battle cry. If the one standing here were just an ordinary soldier, they might have actually been intimidated. But to my eyes, they were painfully slow. So slow they looked like a bunch of geriatrics making pointless gestures. Someone lunged at my back, but I dodged easily just by listening to the sound. An ambush came from the left. I simply sidestepped to let it pass. To my right, someone was charging up an attack. I didn't even bother to look. Within 3 seconds, they had tested my defenses from every direction. I only dodged, hoping to keep someone alive for questioning. But we didn't speak the same language, and they clearly had no intention of stopping. I finally let out a sigh. It seemed they wouldn't be able to give me any answers. In that case, I have no choice but to end this fight. I take a deep breath. Beneath my feet, the scorching sand begins to cool unnaturally, and frost spreads in all directions. This is no natural phenomenon. This is psychic energy eroding reality. Everyone around me tenses up as they sense the anomaly. But it is already too late. I step forward with my left foot, raising my right hand high while lowering my left. Facing the crowd surrounding me, I utter only one sentence. Let me show you how to fly. As the words leave my mouth, a shockwave erupts with me at the center. The men who were screaming battle cries just a second ago are sent flying backward in the next, their shields shattering to pieces. Their bones snap, and their flesh is torn apart in midair. Sand is whipped up into massive waves, and those men are struck as if by an invisible giant hammer, crashing heavily into the distance. The battle ends far too quickly. So quickly that they didn't even have time to fully process their own terror. I stand where I am, but my expression is far from relieved. Because this absolute slaughter has given me no answers. I still don't know where I am, or what era this is. And I have no idea why these people don't recognize the double-headed eagle. My only choice is to head toward the convoy, hoping that inside one of the vehicles I might find some useful clues. But just as I approach the leader's vehicle, and stand only one step away, my left leg suddenly goes weak. It is not pain, but a complete loss of sensation. It feels as though half my foot has suddenly vanished. I stare down at my leg, my mind going completely blank. This is absolutely impossible. That tiny tranquilizer dart, it actually worked. A dart even smaller than a small caliber bullet, releasing just a tiny whisper of gas, is actually paralyzing an Astartes. What on earth is this? Is it a toxin breathed out by Nurgle himself? In that moment, I finally realize that this planet is far from normal, and the people here, no ordinary natives. Forcing my body to move, I drag myself to the vehicle, rip the door clean off, and desperately rummage through everything inside. An antidote, maps, written texts, anything that can explain my current situation. But just as my hand touches a book, the prophecy triggers once again. My vision suddenly shifts upward, hovering high above an arena. Crimson sand, towering walls, crowded spectator stands, and gladiators fighting to the death. That group of slave catchers from earlier is bargaining with the arena's manager, trading their captives. It turns out they aren't an army at all. They're just a band of slavers who capture people, only to sell them into the arena. And right in the center of that arena, I see a young boy. He has a remarkably sturdy build. With a face still so young, he runs across the red sand, terrified, dodging the acid pouring in from all sides. That scene makes my skin crawl because I know exactly who he is. He is no ordinary child. He is a Primarch. He is the future Angren, the one who, later on, would be broken by the butcher's nails, his sanity swallowed by pure rage. A tragic Primarch driven by fate to become a warmongering maniac. But right now, he hasn't been ruined by those nails yet. He can still feel fear. He still feels pain, and still possesses an incredible capacity for empathy. He can feel the suffering of others, even bear it for them. And that is exactly why his future is so utterly heartbreaking. A soul born to understand pain, ended up being forced by the world to become pain itself. Until this very moment, all the pieces finally fit together. Why the slavers were so well trained, why their gear was so bizarre, why they wanted to capture me, and how the anesthetic gas could actually affect an Astartes. There is only one answer. This is Nuceria, a world that throws the strong into gladiatorial arenas, treating pain as entertainment, and human lives as mere merchandise. And me? I was thrown back 10,000 years by the damn warp, right back to where Angron's tragedy first began. Even worse, half of my body is already completely numb. I don't have time to process any of this, or even figure out how to escape. All I can do is lean against the vehicle, staring at the boy from the prophecies, as a wild, absurd thought flashes through my mind. Should I raise Angren? Seriously? If anyone else heard me say that, they would probably think I had lost my mind. But I know, this is no joke. Because I, more than anyone else in this era, know exactly how he ends up. He will have the butcher's nails forced into his brain. He will lose himself to the agonizing pain. He will become the Primarch of the World Eaters, and one of the Imperium's most tragic traitors. But right now, none of this has happened yet. The nails haven't drilled into his skull. The child isn't completely broken yet, and that means, there is still a crack in fate. And I just happened to tumble right into that crack. The numbness keeps spreading. I am losing control of my fingers. My vision starts to fade to black. I lean back against the anti-grav vehicle, and let out a helpless laugh. Well, welcome to Nuceria, as the last word leaves my lips. My body completely gives out, and my head slams down onto the hood. I dent the metal, forcing the entire vehicle to sag under my weight. But before I black out, only one single thought remains in my mind. I have to find that boy. Not for the Imperium, not for the Grey Knights, and not for some grand, noble crusade. Simply because this time, there is still time to save Angren. And in this dark universe, I might be the only one who knows where his path will lead. If fate is going to drag him toward the butcher's nails, then I will beat fate to the punch. I have to find him first. If Nuceria is going to turn him into a monster, then I'll tear this arena to the ground. If this world is fated to shape Angren through pain, then I'm going to make damn sure he knows he isn't destined only for rage. He can be saved, too. This is my first day on Nuceria. One warship destroyed in the warp, 2 Grey Knights missing, dead or alive. A pack of slavers sent flying by me, and a single tranquilizer dart knocking out an Astartes. And before I blacked out, I saw a young Angren. I also saw a crack in a door of an otherwise hopeless fate, one that hadn't completely shut yet. Behind that crack, there was no light, but a flesh-eating gladiator arena. But as long as that door isn't closed, I still have a chance to drag Angren out of there. My name is Chin Sha. I'm a White Scars recruit. Today, I woke up in the arena. There was a voice in my ear, calling out to me over and over. Wake up. I opened my eyes. I saw a stone ceiling, and beneath me was a cold stone slab. The air smelled of sweat and blood, along with the musty stench of a damp cave. Just as I tried to sit up, I saw a man sitting in the corner. He was built like a bear, with a gray beard hanging from his chin. He was holding a cup of muddy water. Seeing me wake up, he froze for a moment, then stood right up, and handed me the cup. His movements were a bit clumsy, but his eyes were incredibly sincere. I couldn't understand a word he said, but I could tell he meant no harm. He even seemed a little concerned. In an arena like this, that's rarer than clean water. I pointed to my ears, and shook my head to show him I couldn't understand. He couldn't understand me either, but a language barrier doesn't mean we can't communicate. I patted the floor in front of me, beckoning him to sit. The bear-like man hesitated for a second, then sat down before me. I raised my hand and pointed to his head, and looked at him inquiringly. He didn't understand, but he nodded anyway. In the next second, my hand pressed against his head. In my memories, the words of the White Scars librarian suddenly came back to me. If there's a language barrier, you can rely on devices or guides. If all else fails, you can always eat their brains, though that's not exactly the best way. The librarian later taught me that psychers have another way. It's not true mind reading, but rather leveraging the desire of both parties to communicate, to extract language memories. I wasn't born with the ability to read brains, but I'm a fast learner. At close range, and with no hostility in his emotions, linguistic memories were slowly drawn out. From childhood to adulthood, every word this man had spoken, every sentence he had heard, and every phrase he had understood, like a coarse thread, was pulled into my mind. A moment later, I had learned Nusarian. I pulled my hand back, and gave him the Aquila salute. Thank you for your trust. Otherwise, I could not have learned it. The man smiled. I can tell you are not from around here, he said. And I can also tell that you are a psyker. There was no fear in him. He only smiled and shook his head. Do not thank me. We gladiators are supposed to help each other. Otherwise, in this hellhole, we would not survive half a day. He said his name was Oino. Mouse. Hearing that name, my heart skipped a beat. It sounded incredibly familiar, like a thorn lodged deep in my memory. But for the life of me, I could not remember where I had heard it. Inemeus did not press me for my name. He simply motioned for me to follow. I followed him out of the stone chamber and into a larger cavern. It was crowded with male and female gladiators. Some watched me warily, some had numb, hollow eyes, while others showed a flicker of kindness. And in some eyes, there was only bloodlust and hatred. Inemeus led me to a barred iron window and explained in a low voice. This is the arena. We are all slaves, captured to entertain the crowds. I did not reply immediately, because I already knew where we were. Nusaria, a world that treats killing as entertainment, a place that throws slaves into the arena and forces them to tear each other to pieces. The reason I woke up here was because of the sedative, a substance so ridiculously potent it could knock out an Astartes, and would put even a Primarch to sleep. I was far more concerned with two questions. First, why did the name Oino Mouse sound so incredibly familiar? Second, since I had clearly slaughtered the slave catchers, who was it that brought me here? But these questions were instantly and violently driven from my mind by the sight outside the window. Outside was the arena, so massive it stretched beyond the horizon. The stands were packed with spectators, their cheers rising like waves, crashing one after another. In the combat zone, energy walls cordoned off a killing field. Over 100 new slaves had been dumped onto the red sands. They were weeping, screaming, cursing, and crying out to the gods for salvation. Some claimed to be citizens, begging the crowd to let them out. But my gaze was captured by only one young boy among them. He was massive, yet he still looked so young. No roar of defiance on his face, only dread and confusion. He stood in the crowd, like a young beast thrown into a slaughterhouse. My throat tightened, and a single name slipped past my lips uncontrollably. Angren. At that moment, I finally understood where in time I had arrived. This was no ordinary boy before my eyes, but a future Primarch, the future lord of the World Eaters. The one who would be driven mad by the butcher's nails, remembered by the entire galaxy as the Red Butcher. But right now, he was just a child who didn't yet know why he lived or why he had to suffer. Standing among the new slaves, Angren could endure physical pain better than anyone. Yet he was the least able to bear the raw emotion in this place. Fear, anger, sadness, and despair. These feelings rushed out from those around him like a flood, pouring directly into his head. But from the stands, came a completely different emotion. Wild revelry, excitement, bloodlust, and anticipation. Two completely opposing forces tore at him at once. He didn't realize those emotions were not his own. He only felt pain, a pain so deep he began to long for his mountains, even if they were freezing, barren, and crawling with beasts. Even when strange, pointy-eared enemies had hunted him down with tranquilizer darts. Compared to this place, those cold mountains felt like paradise. Just then, a metallic sphere descended from above, buzzing around the slaves. Its voice screeching and grating, like a host treating a massacre as a game show. Dear audience, these idiots must think we are going to make them slaughter each other. But actually, we are. Laughter erupted from the stands. The sphere dragged out its words dramatically. Today's arena event is the Tears of the Demon. As the words fell, the ground shook violently. A massive spire rose up from the center of the arena. From all directions, the floodgates opened simultaneously. Crimson liquid came rushing out, and as it washed over the sand, even the blood caked there for years was instantly vaporized. Its corrosiveness was terrifying. Every slave realized that if they wanted to live, they had to climb that spire. At first, they tried to help each other. The young lifted up the old. Mothers pushed their children up first, and two people worked together to pull a single person up. But the liquid rose too fast. The higher up the tower went, the fewer people could stand. In the blink of an eye, survival turned into scrambling, scrambling turned into shoving, and shoving turned into slaughter. Some threw others off, actually smiling as they watched them vaporize in the acid. Behind the iron bars, my fists clenched tighter and tighter. Angren was climbing up too, his body like an engine that never stopped, easily passing everyone else. But with every person he neared, he was pierced by their raw terror. Every time someone died, it felt like he was dying himself. Some tried to push him off the tower, but they couldn't even budge him. Instead, they fell down themselves, as even more lunged at him. He had to fight back. He didn't want them to melt slowly in the acid, so he chose a quicker way. Crushing skulls with his fists, snapping their necks. He was killing them, yet he was also feeling their deaths for them. This child, while fighting for survival, was being torn apart by everyone's agony. Until finally, the very top of the tower, he was the only one left. The acid stopped rising, and the crowd's cheers erupted to a deafening peak. That wave of excitement from the stands, like a sickening, warm tide, washed away the grief in his mind. Angren froze. He didn't understand why these people rejoiced at the deaths of others. Nor did he understand why their joy would affect him. A maggot-like floating sphere drifted right before him, a spotlight bathing him in its glow. The announcer shrieked, "A victor has emerged. The prince from the mountains. Tell me, what is your name?" Angren remained silent. He had no name, or at least, no one here would acknowledge it. The announcer's voice grew even more ecstatic. "Very well, he has no name. A mountain savage, a freak. How could he possibly have a name? Allow me to name him." The sphere buzzed around the boy. As fireworks exploded across the arena, the voice boomed, "Angren Thalker." Hearing that name, a cold dread filled my chest. History was unfolding right before my eyes. Not as a stone monument, not as some distant tragedy passed down through Warhammer lore, but a child, forced down into blood and cheers, stripped of his past, and branded with a slave's name. As the gladiatorial matches ended, Enemeus stood by the window, whispering, "The maggot's eye." I looked at that sphere, that drone. Enemeus nodded. "That's what we call it. The announcer is a spineless maggot, so we call it the maggot's eye." He looked at Angren, his brow furrowing deeply. That child, he is incredibly sensitive deep down. He must be terrified. I didn't say a word, because Enemeus was right. The future Angren would be called a monster by countless souls. But right now, he wasn't a monster. He was the only one in this place who would actually feel pain for others. The announcer's voice turned ice cold. "All right, crawl back to your kennels." The spotlights directed them to the gate, but Angren didn't move immediately. He was observing, searching for a way to escape. He looked at the stands and saw no obvious barriers. He wanted to break out and return to the high mountains. Back to that place where, at least, there wasn't so much agony. But he didn't realize that between the stands and the arena floor was a transparent energy shield. Just as he was about to make his move, the massive gate ground open. From the pitch-black corridor came heavy, thudding footsteps, and pairs of crimson eyes lit up in the darkness. Angren thought they were beasts. But what emerged was no beast. It was row after row of robots, 4 meters tall. Marching in perfect unison, they held oversized shock batons. The maggot's eye buzzed around excitedly. It looked like Angren wanted to test his strength against the security automatons. The next second, the announcer's voice cut like a knife. "Get moving, or I'll have them beat you to a pulp." Angren lowered his head and walked toward the gate. On both sides of the path were nothing but glowing crimson eyes. At every junction, security automatons stood guard, and from the ceiling, heavy weapons hung suspended every few paces. This arena wasn't just some ordinary cage. It was a place where advanced tech was used to lock away the slave's hope and weld it shut completely. I sat back down in the corner of the cave and couldn't help but say, this damn place is really something else. Beside me, a handsome gladiator with a collar around his neck shot me a cold look. "First time?" I raised an eyebrow. "Who gets to come back a second time?" He sneered. "This is my third." I was stunned. He pointed to his collar. "I can turn invisible with sorcery. I escaped twice, but when they caught me the third time, they slapped this thing on me." He pointed to our surroundings again. "This is his second attempt, and that lady's fourth. That big guy over there is also on his second attempt." It makes my skin crawl just hearing this. The 3 treasures of Nuceria. Anesthetics, combat droids, the arena, and now we also have to add a psychic suppressing collar. This place is so absurd. It doesn't even feel like a normal human world. Inemeus came back with some water and immediately called him out. Don't listen to his boasting. His so-called escape was just running out of the cave. He didn't even catch a glimpse of the sky before the droids beat him back here. I nodded. That actually makes sense. The handsome gladiator fell silent and leaned back into the corner. Closing his eyes and playing dead, I leaned against the wall, looking up at the cave ceiling. Anesthetics, security droids, and the arena. Guess I've witnessed all 3 treasures of Nuceria now. There shouldn't be anything left in this hellhole that could shock me anymore. Inemeus gave a bitter smile. I can tell, you're quite the optimist. Just as I was about to admit it, that handsome gladiator piped up again with his eyes still closed. There are plenty of people like him. Sooner or later, they all end up lifeless. I don't think so, I replied. Finding joy in misery is an old specialty of mine. Not even the Grey Knight transformation could erase that. The cave door opened, and Angren was escorted in by the droids. Once the droids left, Inemeus walked over, handing him some bread and water. Eat something. Angren nodded and took the food. He walked to an empty corner and sat down on the ground. He curled his body up, wrapping his arms around his legs. Holding a cup of water in one hand, he forced the hard, dry bread down bit by bit. That sight hurt me more than the slaughter in the arena, because I knew that if this child didn't have the butcher's nails, he would have been the Primarch who best understood the pain of others. Angren finished eating and looked up at Inemeus. Inemeus shook his head. No more left. Next, we fast for 2 days. Only before the match do we get a decent meal. Angren lowered his head. Eating made him a bit calmer, but as the quiet set in, his perception became even sharper. The pain, the yearning for freedom, the emotions of everyone in the cave kept boring into his mind. I walked over and sat down beside him. How did you learn the Nucerian language? That was the question, like pulling him out of the sea. He looked up at me, his eyes completely lost. I don't know, maybe because I had heard them talking earlier. I offered a gentle smile. Master Linguist, have you ever realized that you're not like the others? Maybe you are some kind of special creature. Angren fell silent for a moment, shook his head and asked, how am I different? I looked at him and suddenly thought, this is actually a good thing. He doesn't know he's a Primarch yet, and he hasn't completely detached himself from humanity. He can feel what others are feeling, so he still views them as his own kind. This pain, at least it hasn't driven him to become a lonely, feral beast. I asked him, just now, up on the tower. Did it hurt you? Angren lowered his head. I killed them. I didn't know if it was real or just an illusion. It was like I could feel every single person's emotions when they were killed. It felt like I was the one being killed. I went quiet. In the records of the future, the World Eaters librarians once saw that before the butcher's nails, every time Angren killed a gladiator, he felt a piercing, agonizing pain. Later, the butcher's nails twisted that agony into something else, making slaughter feel like a release and turning pain into pure bloodlust. But right now, this boy hasn't been ruined by the nails yet. He still cries, he still hurts, and he still feels the death of those he has slain. Inemeus walked over and said to him, everyone in this place has swung a blade just to survive. Outside the arena, in the slums, it's the exact same. It sounds like making excuses, but the real blame lies with the slave masters. I glanced at Inemeus, feeling more than ever that this bear of a man possessed a remarkably clear mind. I looked at Angren and said, feeling sad is only natural. But in this place, sorrow is a luxury. You have to learn to live with it. At the very least, don't let it drive you to take your own life, or let yourself fall into ruin. Angren nodded, but I could tell he was just brushing me off. I didn't have a real solution. At least not yet. I needed more information. I needed to know the layout of the arena, the number of automata, the location of the energy shields, and the rules of the slave masters. But before any of that, I had to lift this cave out of this suffocating gloom. I patted Angren on the arm. Listen, I love knowledge, almost like an obsession. When I was a kid, I didn't have any parents. I lived in an orphanage. That place was like an arena where you didn't have to fight. Later, relying on my knowledge, I developed a piece of technology and made a fortune. Then, I used that money to improve the orphanage. Angren listened with absolute focus. He had never seen high mountains or anything outside the arena, the truly vast world. So, every unfamiliar word filled him with curiosity. When I finished speaking, he thought about it for a moment, then asked me in all earnestness, "Are you trying to get me to learn something? But I don't see what this has to do with our current situation, or how it relates." I shook my head. It doesn't. I just wanted to show off. Angren froze, and then let out a bitter smile. Inemeus lowered his head, desperately trying to hold it in. A handsome gladiator burst out laughing. The others in the cave couldn't hold back either. The dark cloud that had been hanging over us seemed to crack open, letting in a sliver of light. The laughter wasn't loud, but it was precious enough. Angren felt it too. This time, what flooded his mind wasn't fear, but a brief, fleeting sense of relief. I looked at Inemeus. Could you guys at least flatter me a bit? Inemeus tried to keep a straight face, looking as solemn as a bear. Impressive. I really mean it. You're far better off than us people who don't even know how to write. A gladiator walked over. What did you do before? A person like you shouldn't have ended up here. Another person leaned in. I bet you used to be rich, cruising around the city on an anti-gravity skiff, showing off. Until you went broke. More eyes turned toward me. Curiosity, vigilance, and numbness all cracking open just a little. I knew my chance had come. The joke wasn't just to show off. At least, not entirely. It dragged them out of their despair. For a single, fleeting second. And that second was all I needed to speak. I let my smile fade, my voice dropping low. My past doesn't matter. What matters is that we're all locked up in here. So why don't we sit down together and talk? This place is freezing cold, and it's far from comfortable. But at least we still have each other. The cave slowly fell silent. Everyone stared at me. I went on, tell me everything you know. Tell me everything about the arena. The mechs, the collars, the passageways, the food, the rules of the arena, and the reasons escape attempts fail. I need every single detail. The first one to speak was that handsome gladiator. He raised a hand and tapped his collar. Don't even think about using sorcery. This thing suppresses psionic power. The more you struggle, the more your brain feels like it's being stabbed with needles. Another woman chimed in. The passageway has 3 gates. The first is the cavern entrance, the second is the fork gate, and the third leads to the elevator platform. There are mechs on every level, and ceiling cannons. Inemeus put down his water cup. Keeping his voice extremely low, he said, the cleanup crew will come in. But the timing isn't fixed. Sometimes it's after a fight. Sometimes before we're starved. They wear protective suits, with small mechs following behind. If you're thinking of stealing the keys, it's practically impossible. I etched these words, one by one, into my memory. The arena isn't just a cell. It's more like a machine. The slaves are the fuel. The spectators are the noise, and the mechs are the gears. And the maggot's eye is the eyeball. That constantly stares at flesh. Someone added, they feed us before a fight, and there's occasionally drugs in the food. It makes you more excited, and less afraid of dying. Hearing this, my heart sank. They even use fear as a seasoning. No wonder the people here gradually turn into beasts. It's not because they were born this way, it's this arena. Every single day, it teaches them how to give up on themselves. The handsome gladiator suddenly opened his eyes. You're asking all this, because you want to escape? The cavern fell silent once again. Every single eye fell upon me. I didn't deny it. I want to live, and I want to keep you all alive, too. Someone sneered. Some didn't believe me, while others had a brief spark of hope in their eyes. Inemeus stared at me, in no rush to take a side. Angren raised his head, too. In his eyes, for the very first time, something other than pain appeared. It was like a spark of fire. Weak, but not yet extinguished, I looked at Angren in the corner. He was still hugging his knees, his eyes still filled with pain. But at least, he was listening. I suddenly thought of the future Angren, who would roar atop countless mountains of corpses, passing his pain down to his legion, making the entire galaxy remember his wrath. But right now, he just sits there with his head bowed, listening to a bunch of slaves argue about which tunnel has a door, which meal delivery is drugged, and which guard machine turns a split second too slow. Fate can be so ironic sometimes. The life and death of a future Primarch might not even rest in the hands of the gods or the Emperor, but rather in some random gladiators. Casual complaint grumbled in passing. I swallow my emotions and keep pressing for details. Will the maggot's eye get close to the slaves? A handsome gladiator replies, it loves getting right in your face to humiliate you. But it flies too fast, you can't hit the damn thing. Oino shakes his head, it's not a matter of hitting it. It's that hitting it does no good. If the orb breaks, the host won't die, and the security machines will swarm in instantly. I nod, then we can't make it our first target. At least not before we're ready. Then, someone asks, do you really have a way out? I look at him, not right now, but not having a plan doesn't mean we can't find one. As those words hang in the air, no one in the cave laughs, yet none of them walk away either. That is enough. As long as people are still willing to listen, it means despair hasn't completely won yet. I look out of the iron-barred window again. The echoes of the crowd's cheers still linger, along with the shadow of the maggot's eye and a monstrous arena that devours lives without leaving a trace. I know that to save Angren, fists alone won't be enough. To escape this hell, we can't just rely on rage. I must first figure out where the gates of this hell actually are.